Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Acclivity. I am Dr. Loren M. Hill, your academic career coach. And today I have someone with me who you will find amazing. I just respect all that she's doing to support our sisters in different places and spaces. She has a specialty of kind of helping us resolve our issues around toxic workspaces. And so we'll get into that in just a second. But I want to introduce you formally to Dr. Kamani Norton Sands. And for branding purposes, we will be calling her Dr. Kamani all throughout this, because when you look her up on social media, and she's got amazing social media, she does IG Live, she's just all over the place. But when you find her, you'll find her by looking up Dr. Kamani. And we will have a link to her info, her social media in the podcast area. So welcome, Dr. Kamani. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hill. I appreciate being here today.
Yes, so let's get started at the beginning. So I know you went to Spelman.
Yes, that's my background.
Yes, that's your background. We see it, we recognize it back there. You are a proud alumnus of Spelman. You go,
Yes,
girl. And
yes,
then you went on to earn your PhD in clinical psychology from the California School of Professional Psychology. So you are
correct.
currently in California, in Los Angeles, and I know that because we're actually neighbors. so so I just adore her. And again, she's doing amazing things, or you are doing amazing things. And so tell us about your experience in grad school, because I'm sure that's where you first kind of encountered some of the toxicity. We know that didn't happen at Spelman, but
Right.
I'm sure that when you went to a PWI to earn your PhD, you
Mhm.
probably saw that or encountered that. What happened?
Well, actually, Dr. Hill, I want to go back to high school because or elementary school. That's when I first encountered being in toxic academic environments,
Mm,
and being one of the few Black people in a class or in a
mm,
school, and how stressful that is, and how I had to learn at a very early age how to advocate for myself, how to stand up for myself. Many times I was like the only Black person in an honors or an AP class, and just the disrespect and the racism that I encountered. So and I think because my parents kind of prepared me for this, the talk, and, kind of building me up all the time, I was kind of prepared for that. But, Dr. Hill, I don't know if you know, I was in graduate school previously in Georgia. That's where I started my graduate school experience. And it was horrific. I mean, the level of racism was just horrific. We had a professor who got all the Black students together. There's three of us, three Black women. He got all of us together. He said, I want to meet with you guys after class. And he says, Black people usually fail this class. So I'm going to make it mandatory for you guys to come for a once a week tutorial session with me. Right. So in terms of being targeted, being told that you're less than, that you need extra support, and then so-called mandatory support, like that doesn't even make
right.
any sense. And then to add injury to insult to injury, was that when we went to other faculty and explained to them what was happening, nobody supported us, Dr. Hill, nobody. And even the one Black faculty member said, oh, he was just joking, right?
Yeah.
So no support. We ended up filing a racial complaint, went through a whole hearing. Needless to say, that was not the place for me, right? So I had to
Right.
stop all the time I had been at that place, and I had to reapply, and I ended up at California School of Professional Psychology, which was a very different experience because when I was there, very diverse faculty. So it was a very different experience, and I was able to talk about and learn about um, being a person of color in terms of psychology and historical influences on psychology. So it's a very different experience. And those experiences in the past help prepare me for graduate school and then the professional endeavors.
Wow, that is really harrowing. I mean, I'm on the one hand, I'm not surprised by it. I wasn't aware of that happening in your first graduate experience, but it's not uncommon,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
I know that when you were at California School of Professional Psychology, you actually were in the multicultural
yes.
concentration, and so I have to think that there was probably a higher level of awareness of
Mhm.
some of those things and a safer space for you all to be able to be processed and supported
Yeah,
through your graduate studies. So
yeah.
I'm so
And
glad.
can I just say something to Dr.
Sure.
Hill was that even though that space provided for more conversation, there were times that I had to speak up, to some students who were misinformed, right?
Mhm.
Or even there was one, even actually two white women professors who did some very offensive things, right? So
Mhm.
there were a group of Black women in the class, and she referred to us as a posse, right? And then another situation where I was the only Black person in the class, and the professor, another white woman, had showed like lynching and all these things of Black people with no framing to the class, no like trigger warning, no nothing, no
Mhm.
check-in with me, nothing. And so again, because of my experiences early on in elementary school, I spoke up to these women,
Yes.
as a side and say, hey, I just want to alert you that was offensive and this is why it was offensive. So
Mhm.
even when you're in an environment where it purports one thing, you may still experience racism on different levels.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you took us back to your K through 12 experience, right? Because I also, kind of shaking my head going, yeah, well, we know how that goes as well
Yeah.
when you are the only
Yep.
and we often forget about those earlier times, right? We're like, oh, well, come to think of it, when I was in elementary or when I was in middle school or I was in junior high school, if I was the only or the smartest or the woman or the this or whatever the demographic is, that's the other.
Yes.
We have these encounters where people do micro or macro aggressions, right?
Yes. Yes.
Just going about their day. So we could experience this, Dr. Kamani, what you're saying, we can experience sort of over the lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
Absolutely.
early, then it could be young adult, then it could be later on in career. And
Yep.
I know you deal with these issues in the workplace, right? The
Yes.
work environment.
Yes, 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 absolutely, absolutely. And may I say that, even though I've never been a professor, a lot of my clients, in terms of therapy clients and also coaching clients, are Black women in academia.
Mhm.
So either the college level or teachers, administrators. I mean, the level of treachery is
Mhm.
just unbelievable.
Yes, yes. And I know that firsthand because I was in and continue to be in higher ed in a number of positions. And I'm so encouraged to hear that you are available to treat women of color who are in higher ed. And, one of the things that I also like to point out is that the higher ed is just a workplace, right?
Right.
You could call it, you could be there, you could be in the industry, you could be in, I was talking to someone who is an engineer and they've experienced it because you got the gender issue as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And so I think that it is important for women and people who are in marginalized, demographics, if you will. And that doesn't even feel right coming off
I
my
know.
but
Yes,
you all
yes,
kind of know where I'm going with this, is to be able to get help,
yeah,
right? And help can come in a lot of different ways. So we're hearing more about affinity groups, right? So those can happen on a college campus, in a workplace, and it's a place where you can go and sort of be with people who are like you, right? So affinity. But then you might need something a little more specific, right? Some one-on-one. So you might have some peer coaching, but then you may need something more professional and focused on your mental health needs. And so
yeah,
that's where you would come in, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, in two regards. So one, I think affinity groups are great. However, I think many times those are somewhat performative DEI gestures in terms of
Yes,
having affinity groups without
yes,
looking at the systemic issues that gives rise to the systemic racism, right? So we know
right,
systemic racism is in all of our systems. So if there's affinity groups without the systemic change, then that's problematic, right? So
yes,
that's part of what I do also. I do trainings on what is true transformative diversity work. So that's a big bucket that I do, right? I
mhm,
also do, of course, therapy, but coaching for Black women who are in toxic jobs, they've left toxic jobs, but they've experienced some type of harm, because we know that being in a toxic workplace can be a form of workplace trauma.
mhm,
So my services are to help Black women heal from the toxicity, heal from the trauma, because when you've gone through that trauma, it can just impact you physically, psychologically, spiritually. And when we don't heal from that, we'll end up taking that garbage to our
right,
next professional opportunity, or we're so broken down that we can't even think about what our next steps are, right? So that's
mhm,
what my coaching program is. And then I also have a masterclass coming out in collaboration with Anne Marie Archer, who is the anti-HR lady. She's also an attorney. And the masterclass is called Save Yourself from a Toxic Hostile Job, Channel Your Inner Harriet so you can leave your toxic hostile job with your sanity and your coins. So I'll give you information about that in terms of registration. So I have used in my own healing journey from a toxic job, from a school system, right? So again, talking about the treachery within academia. So I have used my own healing journey, pivoting, resigning from that place. And how do I heal? I developed a YouTube channel. So
mhm.
I've talked about my healing journey. I've been talking about it for over a year. And my YouTube channel is Lifting As We Climb Consulting Wellness Services. And I've invited more guests. So Dr. Hill, you were a guest, right? So all these Black women that I've reached out to, or who have reached out to me to
Right.
tell their story, because I want Black women to know that healing is possible. And I'm here to support you in terms of channeling your inner Harriet, my inner Harriet, so you can get out these toxic jobs.
Yes. And so what I love about this, Kimani, is even before we knew each other, we had sort of similar experiences in being in toxic workplaces in
Yeah,
academia, right? And to later find out that we both resigned from those positions, and
yes,
after having left them, really being able to thrive. And
yes,
I think that what I would have loved to have had in my team would have been a Dr. Kimani, because I had a mentor, I had a coach, I had some peers, but I didn't have a therapist who
yeah,
could walk me through the healing process.
yeah,
And I think that it's important to be able to have a safe space to sort of go through that, right?
yeah.
Because what I went through was no joke.
It's devastating.
You know,
It's devastating.
and,
Yeah,
and so we already are sort of fighting with the imposter syndrome, and places that we don't see anybody like us. And then when we're damaged and traumatized by these places and spaces,
yeah,
it can really take you out of the game,
yes,
right? It can
yes.
take you out.
And Dr. Hill, can I just speak to also when we talk about what the experiences are for Black women? There's a whole concept of pets a threat, which was created by three Black women in academia, right? So Dr. Juanita Johnson-Bailey, Dr. Keisha Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, and they came up with this concept, and I'm pretty sure you experienced it. I know I experienced it. So 𝗏𝗃𝗃 in that a Black woman is sought out for her expertise, her brilliance, all these different things. She comes into the organization, she shines. She's doing all these wonderful things. Oh, we love Dr. Hill. She's so smart. She does all these wonderful things, right? Then when Dr. Hill starts outshining other people, particularly those in leadership positions, then the shift is that you're the threat, right? And then you get the attack and the push out. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Now, before I knew of the term 𝗏𝗃𝗃, I know I experienced it, right?
Right.
But I've had the honor of meeting, the
Yeah.
researchers and having them on my channel as well. And just the more we talk about it, the more we raise awareness, right? So we take away the shame and we validate experiences and we let people know healing is possible.
And I loved that episode. And in fact, it was so interesting because the first time I heard a piece of that was when I was at a Women of Color conclave, and Melissa Harris Perry was there, and she talked about being a woman in the academy and going into either people seeing you as sort of 4 buckets. One would be a daughter, a date, pet, or threat, right?
Ooh.
And so when I later saw, you recently had the researchers on your show, I was like, oh my goodness, I loved it because it helped to expand my knowledge of that, and to then, just as you said, validate you, because I have been actually all 4 of those, viewed through all 4 of those lenses.
Yes.
It's not uncommon.
It's
And then
dehumanizing.
it is very dehumanizing. And then how do you recover from that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so naming it is a big piece of moving towards recovery, because even if
Absolutely.
the perpetrator, if you will, doesn't recognize it as that, you can recognize it as that. And then you can say, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. This really is a thing that's going.
Right. I did an interview yesterday about self-gaslighting, because that's a real thing. So we start questioning ourselves, like, yes, we do self-assess. We do that all the time, but I think we over self-assess as Black women going to the workplace. Like, we're constantly assessing, we're constantly monitoring. We know about the tone policing, and I've heard Black women talk about masking,
Yes.
all day at work, right? So presenting a certain way, but crying on the way to work and crying leaving from work, right? So again, the toll that it takes on us.
And I do remember some research from a faculty member who actually came out of, or was part of CSPP, and it was about shifting. And
Oh, yes.
yes,
Dr.
so
𝗂𝗵𝗁.
that's right. That's right.
Yes, she was on my dissertation committee.
Wow, I didn't know that, but she was amazing. And I
Yes.
remember seeing her at a conference, a California Psychological Association conference in Sacramento. And I was just mesmerized by what she was saying in her research, because it is that constantly having to move from identity to identity, and putting the mask on and taking it off, and it is exhausting.
It is. And think of this, Dr. Hill, that we are dealing with all of this to serve and help other people,
Yes.
right? So sometimes we're being harmed in the process of trying to help and heal other people, which doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. So that if we start there, that none of this makes any sense, right? It's good to know that we have people like you telling us, you're right, it doesn't make sense. And now what? Here's how we can heal and move towards recovery. And I think that, for what you do, and to a degree, what I do is, okay, this is what it is, but I still need you to get up, sis. I still
Yes.
to put that portfolio together so I can help you get that, rank promotion or that tenure or get into that administrative position so that you can continue to help people, but you
Yeah.
don't sort of implode along the way
Ooh,
or
ooh.
carrying the weight of it,
You
right?
don't break. Yeah. And I think part of it too is a discussion about, is this the system for you? You know what I'm saying? Because
Right.
the system generally knows it's toxic, right? They know about the workplace bullies, they know about all these different things. So while there might be levels of toxicity, it's really determining for yourself, is this the level of toxicity that I want to be in, right?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
it's harmful to you, then maybe think about what is your exit strategy to get out and find something better where you are respected and affirmed.
And I love that because you and I are always really talking about this concept of goodness of fit, right?
Yes, yes,
So,
yes,
yes, okay, I got to deal with some stuff, but this is the stuff I want to deal with.
right.
And how is this really supporting my elevation, right?
Yes,
I love your company's name, Lifting as We Climb, because
mhm,
we are going to climb, and who
yes,
going to lift and bring as we move forward.
absolutely.
You're going to have to sign up for some level of shenanigans. But if it's the level that's going to take you out of the game, then
Right.
let us help you navigate and negotiate your exit and pivot,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And heal
And
and recognize you're being harmed. So a
right,
lot of times we keep going, 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 and we don't recognize the harm until the harm has already happened. And I
right.
just want to quote another academia person, Dr. 𝗬𝗧𝗧𝗧, and she talks about extensively on her podcast too about the harm of being in a toxic job and how the toxic job not only harmed her, but it harmed her mother, her
Yes,
daughter, right? So it spills over to other environments. And we
right.
have to recognize when enough is enough to
Yes.
save ourselves. And she said something else too. I just want to quote her really quick. She said, no job is worth your life, right? And she also mentioned why let's stop killing ourselves for jobs that would not grieve for us at our graves.
Yes, 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 yes. And what we often have to sort of reset, right? Just take a breath and reset and understand is that it's a big world out there. There
Yes,
are a lot of
absolutely.
jobs. There are a lot of places. There are places that will welcome you. You have a talent or multiple talents and gifts that somebody wants and needs and will value,
Yes,
appreciate you. And I
yes,
think when you understand that in your core, it will help you get through those days. It will help you formulate your exit plan or
yeah,
your strategy to address the shenanigans that are going on.
yes,
How you don't have to suffer in silence all the time.
yes,
And
yes,
it is not healthy to do that, right?
yeah,
Being Superwoman, that is a cartoon character. It's not
right,
real life. And
right,
sometimes people will look at Black women and even Black girls and think they shoulder more, right? Because
right,
of all of the nonsense around that. And that's a discussion
right.
for another day. But no, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay.
Yeah. And it's okay to recognize when the environments around us are harming us. I find it very hard. Sometimes we think, well, I'll just wait for my vacation or I'll do these different things. And I say to women, how can you heal an environment that's harming you? Number one. Number two, I bring up research from the American Heart Association that talks about we're now as Black women dying at earlier ages, we're developing cardiovascular disease earlier, we're more impacted by racism, sexism, all these external issues impact our health. So it is a life or death matter that we do address these issues and recognize the harm and pivot. Like we talked about options, we need to recognize we do have options.
And the thing too about what you were just saying about just how we're being taken out, right?
Yes,
Silent killers, the stroke. So we want to wait to the weekend, or we want to wait to the holiday, or we want to wait to the vacation. But what you and I both know, Dr. Kimani, is you can't turn that brain off, right?
No,
So even
no,
while you are in a restful state, sleeping, napping, something like that, your brain is always trying to solve these issues,
yep,
right? And
yep.
so, okay, you go on vacation with your family or your friends or whatever, and all the time you're ruminating about how
You're taking the
often
garbage with you.
you're taking the garbage with you instead of packing your swimsuit,
Right, right.
enjoying it. So I really, really appreciate what you're doing, how you're trying to support women and how you have really embodied this whole, concept of lifting as we climb. And I'm so grateful that you were able to find your voice.
Oh, yes, me too. That's part of the healing too, is that we think about the trauma that happens at these workplaces. There's a degree of silencing, right? So for me to say, no, you're not going to do this to me, and now I'm going to talk louder. So more Black women, right? And I, Lauren, Dr. Hill, there's so many Black women that have reached out to me across the world, right? So this is a
Mhm.
global issue. It's not just an American issue. And, because of my experience and my own healing journey, which I've been very transparent about, I've also given a name, to what I've experienced, and I call it psychological lynching.
Mhm.
So I was going through an experience where I was being humiliated, I was being demoralized, I was, all demoted, like all these different things, because I dared to speak up against the system, right? A school system, right? How dare I? And so when you think about psychological lynching in terms of what my experience was, it was not only I'm going to punish her or try to take her out, but I also am going to humiliate her. And I am going to try to shame her so other people will see her and stay in line, right? Because I've heard Black women, I've heard Black people at the previous job say that to me. Say, we saw what happened to you, we're not gonna speak up. Even though they are also aware of so many Black women at that previous job who have died, Dr. Hill, like literally died, or developed cancer, heart attacks, all these different things. They know that, but still they're kept in place because of fear. And when I say fear, and I'm very transparent about the fear too, I'm sure you experience it too, Dr. Hill, right?
Yep.
The
Yep.
fear is going to be there. The fear of leaving is going to be there. That doesn't mean stop. That just means pay attention and get your plan together.
Right. And you must have a plan
Yes,
because whatever, for good or for bad or whatever it is, believe me, other people have plans. And
yes,
sometimes those plans are to take you out, and
yes,
sometimes those plans are to support you, but you
yeah,
don't always know, right?
yeah,
And so you have to just get out there, and sometimes you have to take a few lumps.
yeah,
And then, you'll know where you stand, where they
yeah,
stand. And
yeah,
this the psychological lynching, man, that is really something else. And it is truly a thing. And it happens to more of us than I would like to, still be admitting in this day.
yeah, yeah,
And I want to say that I know your primary focus is with women of color, Black women, but I definitely want our listeners to know that this can happen to anyone. It is, you could be gaslit, you could be, targeted, you could be on your way up and someone's just shooting you out the sky. And it
hmm,
is intentional
yeah,
because you have become a threat to
yes,
right.
yes,
And
yes,
so I just want us to all really be thoughtful about if this is happening to you or if it's happening to someone that please reach out to get some support because there is a system here to support you. And Dr. Kimani is part of that system. I'm part of that system. And so I want to thank you today for sharing your story and giving us some insights and talking to us about, the research and all of these things that we need to know so that we can continue to ascend and aspire to great things, and
Yeah.
you can help us lift as we climb.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Hill.
You're very welcome. And once again, I am Dr. Loren M. Hill. I am your academic career coach. And thank you for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you next time.